So Fabian is an award-winning. He wrote this, so I'm just.
I should have changed it. I should have changed.
Award-winning senior technologist with more than a decade of experience in technology and nearly 2 decades in the finance industry. He's worked as a project manager, business analyst, application manager, and software developer. Suffice to know that he knows DevOps as much as that DevOps is much more than a collection of tools, as we all know, predominantly about people and cultural change. And I believe you have a couple of anecdotes to share with us today.
Yes.
Awesome. So without further ado, please give it up for Fabian.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm super excited to be here. I love the lineup, very much looking forward to 2 days of conversations with all of you. As mentioned, this is a culture talk. I'm not saying tools don't matter, right? I'm just saying they go hand in hand. And just to kick off this conference, a more lightweight culture talk, and I'm going to share with you the anecdotes I tell my team, the people in my organization. And I do this to drive the culture, to see certain behaviors that I believe are key ingredients of a successful DevOps environment in a company. You already heard my introduction. I'm Fabian Basciani, engineering manager. Yes, and we deploy every other day. It's a trading system at the moment. I used to build online banking systems, at the moment trading systems for JP Morgan in London. We are around 1% of global markets, $15 billion daily on average that we trade. So lots of experience in shipping large-scale systems. So how does actually this presentation is going to work? Whenever you see this slide, it's basically I'm throwing a catchphrase at you. Why am I doing this? I think catchphrases are super powerful. As an example, if my child watches Pinocchio, Pinocchio gives a message, and one of the key messages is like a 90 minutes movie, and the key message is don't lie. If you lie, your nose will grow, right? And we all know this story. The good thing is, whenever we are in a situation, I just need to tip my nose, and my son knows, lying is bad. And I can reuse this all the time. Whenever we are in a situation, or he finds himself in a situation, I just do this, and he knows exactly what kind of behavior in our family, in our neighborhood, in our community, we expect to be good, and what we think is bad. And this is how I use catchphrases. I tell my people a story, and then later I can't always repeat the story and have another 15, 20 minutes in every meeting or every stand-up. But what I can do is I can use the catchphrase to reference the story we already discussed to see a certain behavior. So whenever you see that slide, I throw a catchphrase at you that I use in my team. I'm not saying these are the only catchphrases you should use. And I would actually love to hear afterwards your catchphrases, your anecdotes, and if you just find one of them useful for you, then I think already my talk was a success. So here we go. Let's start with a non-controversial one. Jose Mourinho, the best football coach that ever lived. Okay, you guys agree? Not? Shall we quickly do you agree? Hands up if you agree. One up there, okay. Louis van Gaal, who? Okay. So he was in an interview, Jose Mourinho, and they asked him, what do you teach Jose Mourinho? And what do you teach Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the best football players that ever played the game? And he was basically responding, I'm not teaching Cristiano Ronaldo how to take free kicks, right? He actually is not a chess master. He's not putting the players in the position, telling them exactly what to do in every minute. When the game starts, they move by themselves. He creates the environment. He's responsible for the environment. So he's more like a gardener, right? You can't go and plant a tomato and shout at the tomato, grow faster. It just doesn't work, right? But what you can do is you find the right spot in your garden where the carrots can grow, where the tomato can grow. So my catchphrase is, be a gardener, not a chess master, right? So this is for the engineering managers out there. Don't put in the Jira exactly what every single person needs to do and check in. Let them be self-organized and It takes time, like growing a tomato, but this is how a successful key ingredient for a successful DevOps culture. This gentleman here is Ray Dalio. He wrote a book, Principles. I recommend it, really good. And he is the founder of the most successful hedge fund ever, Bridgewater Associates. And if you would join his company, and you would go into an interview, sorry, not an interview, into a meeting, it would be I'm pretty sure different than what you guys experienced, because everyone would sit there with a little tablet, and while you have the meeting, you would rank how other people are performing in the meeting. So you would say like, oh, Floor was very aggressive today, John, I just picked you, sorry. Tom just dismissed other opinions and was just repeating the same thing all the time. And not only do they do this, they also share all the information with everyone in the room, and everything that was discussed goes onto the public intranet, and everything is there. The only thing they don't make accessible to everyone is salaries or your medical records. Everything else is completely transparent for everyone. Why is he doing this? He's doing this because he wants to take out the ego, and he wants to make sure the best ideas win. And the best idea sometimes comes from the intern and sometimes from the head of the department, but everyone should have the chance to express themselves, and he was super successful in this. Catchphrase, no cone of silence. I have seen many times in big organizations that people say like, okay, let's take this offline, and when they take it offline, then somehow a lot of people are not in the room anymore when it's offline. Or they say like, okay, let's discuss this later. Okay, not everyone needs to know this. This is where I always throw at people, no cone of silence. If we want to have self-organized teams, they need to have the ability to make the right decisions. And they can only do the right decision if they have all the information and it's completely transparent. So again, key, especially for management, my advice is no cone of silence. All the info needs to go to the people who make the decisions, which are the engineers. This is, as you can see, unfortunately, this plane crashed down. The anecdote goes like this, that the Korea airline had a way higher crash rate, and unfortunately also with quite high fatality rate. And this was in the 90s. These days much better, so don't worry if you fly Korea Airlines anytime soon. So they did an analysis. Airplane, the same. Must be maintenance. Maintenance, the same. Training was the same. And they wondered, how is it possible that they crash way more? So they went a bit deeper, and they found out it's the culture. So they had in the 90s still an old school culture where if you are the pilot and you are usually older, you're always right. If you are the co-pilot and you are younger, you're usually wrong, and the best thing is you should be quiet. So they had, in a very extreme scenario, a pilot who was clearly intoxicated, going into the cockpit, flying the airplane, then the alarm goes on for soon you're gonna crash. It took more than 10 minutes, and their lives were at stake. And it took more than 10 minutes, the co-pilot, to say like, why do you ignore the alarm? Which unfortunately that scenario was too late. No cockpit culture. One thing that I look out for is pull requests. I go into pull requests, and if you have a developer just shouting at people, basically, change this, do this, and there is no actual conversation, why are they doing stuff? And it's always him or her or anything in between deciding this, then you have cockpit culture. Then you have someone who's holding on to the code, making all the decision, and shutting everyone else down, and everyone else around it becomes what we call a code monkey. I guess you know those guys. This is Paul McCartney and George Harrison from the Beatles. I think it's the most successful band that we ever had. Hey Jude, does anyone, do you know this now? You want to sing it for us? Why not? Tonight, karaoke? Yeah. Or shall we do it right now? 1, 2, 3. Hey Jude, don't make it bad. Have a sad song and make it better. Okay, too early in the morning. Let's try again tonight. Let's try again tonight. I promise you I'm doing it. So where was I? So yeah, the Beatles. So how does it go? Hey Jude, they went to the studio, and Paul McCartney went in there and said like, hey, I have this amazing song, listen to it. George Harrison was like, I love it. And now where do we place the guitar? As we all know, there is no guitar solo in that song, right? And they had a massive argument, massive conversation. And at the end of the day, Paul McCartney said like, okay, I listened to all of you guys. I came up with the song. Let's not have a guitar in there, even though we usually always have a guitar in there. And I guess he was right, because it's the most successful song that they wrote and one of the most successful songs ever. I call this Empower Your Engineers. So how is this different from the cockpit culture? This is not Paul McCartney saying like, this is my song, I decide, everyone else shut up. This is, he knows the song, he knows the whole idea of the song, he looked at it holistically, but then reaches out to the bandmates, gets their input, listens them out, and then comes with the right decision. And I think this is very, very different than cockpit culture. I think this is very powerful. So what we do is, I guess most of you have a microservice distributed system, very popular these days to build systems like this. And what we do is we have subject matter experts for certain areas of code, certain microservices, but you don't hold on to them like this, right? You encourage other people to commit. You want to actually share the knowledge and go out there and talk about the design and the principles behind it. And those people look at it holistically and also in the long run, making sure people don't do just little hacks, if else, somewhere in the system and make it a legacy system, right? Let's move on. Let's go to the military. As you can see, I mix it up with a lot of different, some are sports, military. This one is from the military. This fine gentleman is General Stanley Allen McChrystal, and he led the invasion into Iraq. As you can see on the flag behind, is from the US Army. And he wrote a fantastic book, by the way, Team of Teams. If you haven't read it, write it down, read it. I highly recommend it. And what he faced is Al-Qaeda, and the US was basically heavily losing. And one of the biggest problems they had this old school of command, like chess master style, as we said before, system, and he wanted to break it down into basically agile teams. So when they had soldiers on the ground and they were, for example, following a key target on the Al-Qaeda side, they couldn't communicate with any other branch of the military. If they met another soldier on the ground, they couldn't talk to them because of secrecy levels. And if they needed to make a decision, let's say they met another target and they should follow that other target, for example, they needed to call the commander. The commander perhaps had to call someone in Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C. it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and until they make the decision, the target's already left and the mission failed. So actually the soldier on the ground needs to be able to make the decision. To go back to Ray Dalio, no cons of silence. They gave all the information to the soldiers. They allowed them to interact with any other branch, right? If they met a CIA agent on the ground, you can exchange information. And also key was they are allowed to make the decisions, which also means they get it wrong. But them getting a situation wrong is less worse than them waiting and then no decision is made, or the decision is made too late and you're too late. So my catchphrase is, asking for forgiveness is cheaper than asking for permission. You're in a very fast-paced world. Empower your engineers to make the decisions, and they inform you. I don't know, you join Scrum calls or whatever, squads calls or whatever model you run, and you overrule after the decision, right? And by the way, this system comes originally from the US Navy. This is actually the Navy used to operate. So on the ships, if something happens, the guys decide and let the captain know what they decided, and the captain after the fact jumps in, right? So if you have a lot of bureaucracy and you need to have tickets and approval and everything that's very bad, because it slows down your company, and most probably people will not make these decisions at all, or not in time, and the competition runs away from you. Let's go to comics, Dilbert. I guess most people know Dilbert. I love Dilbert. Perhaps, can you read it at the back, or I can read it out loud for you? Studies show it takes 10,000 hours of practice to be great at anything. I would think a willingness to practice the same thing for 10,000 hours is a mental disorder. That makes me feel better about my mediocrity. You are welcome, right? So the 10,000 K rule means whatever you do for 10,000 hours, you will be really good at it, right? With the right amount also of talent. And they did this with chess, with football, with tennis, and they could prove that basically even kids spend 10,000 hours, they're really good at it. So if you want your son to be the next, I don't know, Marco van Basten, get 10K hours in, and they must probably be decent at football. How does this translate to tech? I think it doesn't. What is different in sports? The game, the rule of the game didn't really change. Football is more or less the same as those people in West London decided to be the rules. Tennis still the same, chess basically still the same, tiny little tweaks, right? But if your son or daughter practice free kicks and penalty kicks now, most probably in 10, 15 years, that's still a relevant skill. In tech, not so much. Sorry. Here you go. Speed is more important than time spent, is my catchphrase. Now people use this to commit very ugly code, saying like, why do you need unit tests? Hey, speed is more important than time spent. No, that's not what I'm saying. Quality still matters. What I'm saying here is, especially for bigger organizations, what I have seen is, oh, I need to have something to do with a database. Oh, don't touch this. You need to have a guy who spent at least 10,000 hours on database to do anything. Oh, I think there is a new messaging system on the market that I want to try out because it literally solves a problem in my business domain, in my context. We need to hire first a guy who has 10,000 hours experience in that technology, especially funny if the technology is out like 6 months. Yeah, a bit difficult to find that guy. And this is what I mean. So empower your engineers that they can actually use those technologies, play around with those technologies. Is it messaging, database, and so on. And even if they are not that experienced, take the risk because, as you all may know, it's a very fast-paced technology world out there. Let's move on to sports again. This time basketball. If you don't know those three gentlemen there, who do we have here? We have Dennis Rodman, Michael Jordan, called the GOAT, greatest of all time, and we got Scottie Pippen. And they became the best NBA franchise in history. They won basically everything, and still they have many, many records. And the story goes like this. Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan, they played together, they loved playing together. And one thing was Michael Jordan wanted to have different players around and wanted to keep some that actually were traded away, so he got really, really frustrated how they do the hiring and selling. Even though he was basically the best player, they didn't listen to him. Then Dennis Rodman, a very flamboyant character, and had personal beef with Scottie Pippen. I think in a game once he punched him. So not the best hire if you on day one need to apologize to half of the team for previous offenses, but that's literally what they did. And everyone was thinking basically that Chicago Bulls are crazy hiring Dennis Rodman, especially he was traded away, he was in a team which he couldn't play anymore because he went partying and all that stuff that he did, right? But they hired him anyway. So let's put it this way, it wasn't really a cultural fit. It wasn't really a team fit. And many times when we hire, I see people have a very strong focus on those things. And especially in times of inclusiveness and diversity, we may have a bias there, right? What they did here is, I think, is a very prime example of they checked what is missing in this cross-functional team. We have very strong offense, but actually they lacked in defense. And Dennis Rodman is actually one of the best rebounders that ever played the game. And this was exactly missing. So they went for the skill and made sure they have this inclusive environment where a flamboyant character like Dennis Rodman can actually somehow fit in and be the best player that he can be, especially on the defense side. And they won basically everything that you can win in NBA. I call this hire smart. When we hire, especially sometimes you have this super strong, let's say, Java dev, and he tries to hire more people like him or herself, and he's saying like, no, we already got the Java expertise. It's you, right? What else do we need in the team? Do we need people who know more about Grafana, monitoring, performance tuning? What ingredients are missing in the team? Let's look out and make sure we have a culture in our team where any kind of character, somehow we can bring them in and they can give us what they have. Who used to have an iPod? I guess most people. Who had exactly this model? It's the first one. Oh, wow. If you remember, you couldn't create a playlist, right? How can you not have an iPod with a playlist? So you literally needed to connect to iTunes, and then you need to download it. And why was that? And this wasn't because of the engineers. Because apparently, I mean, you know why. Who shut it down at Apple, if anyone did any decision? Steve, exactly. So the developer actually wanted to create the interface to actually create playlists, and Steve was like, it's not going to happen. And they apparently had a huge argument at Apple. It's like, this is crazy. Of course they want to create playlists on the go, like we do all today with Spotify and who knows what else you use. And the reason is he zoomed out and looked on it as a product. As engineers, sometimes we see our epics and we have our Jiras, and we break down those problems in those tiny little Jiras and tasks, and then we solve them and we bring it all back together and it fits, right? We are really, really good in basically like tunnels, and we go from both sides of the mountains and it perfectly matches in the middle. And we are really good at this. But we sometimes forgot about, it's not about the project, it's not about the epic, it's at the end about the product overall, holistically. This product was about, I don't remember exactly if it was 3 or 4 clicks. You can do whatever you want to do, and you don't need to be what used to be called a geek to use that thing. Everyone can use it. Someone that is not usually using technology can use it. Try with this interface, if you look at it, to create a playlist. You cannot do it in 3 or 4 clicks, right? It's a huge task. And you would need to be a power user. And that's why Steve Jobs shut it down, because the interface wasn't ready yet for the feature. So he looked at it holistically as a product. So I call it usually, it's the product stupid. I usually skip the stupid when I talk to people. Just not that you think this is how I roll, but this is key. When we talk about features and off we go, and we go into these tiny little nitty-gritty details, I usually throw at people, hey, what about the product? To help people zoom out and see, like, does it fit into the product that we have? Dave Brailsford, do I still have time? I still have time, good. By the way, he's the guy in the car, he's not the guy on the cycling. So these days, actually, Team GB in the UK is very successful. People would even call the island of Britain like a cycling nation. It didn't used to be like this. They would actually be appallingly poor until Dave showed up, and they even won the Tour de France, right, which is usually seen as one of the best cycling races to win. And he started looking into those tiny little marginal gains. So he would check stuff like, if you travel and you're at the airport and you lift up your luggage, just put a little strain on your back. If you sleep in a hotel and you don't have your blanket, you don't have your mattress or your pillow, you sleep slightly less good. And interestingly, most coaches in cycling knew those things, but they think the difference is like 0.01%. Who cares? You're not going to win a race. No, actually you do. Because all those marginal tiny little gains compounded over time makes you win the race. And as you can see here, if you do 1% better every single day, you will be 1% better at the end of the year, right? What does this, so the catchphrase? Watch out for marginal gains. So if you have a stand-up and someone says like, oh, by the way, I saw this test was pretty slow and now it's, I don't know, sub millisecond, celebrate it. Watch out for this. If you see people doing this, I think this is fantastic culture, fantastic behavior, that people care about these tiny little details. Make the build a bit faster by 1 second. 60 times 1 second and we got a minute down. Imagine compound this, if you build into UAT, like, I don't know, we do like 8, 9, 10 times a day, every time a minute is 10 minutes a day, compounded of 3, this makes a huge difference. So I always watch out for this and try to celebrate this in the team, that I see that behavior to care about, like flaky tests and all that stuff, right? People spending time at it, right? Most people don't put that in a 2-week scrum. Go and check the flaky test, right? You just need to, people that go through the code, they see it, they fix it. Fantastic behavior. My last one, I still have 2 minutes, good. Who knows which movie? Toy Story, exactly, yes. I mean, groundbreaking, right? It was like that first big animation movie, and it was for everyone, it was for the kids, for the adults, it got everything in there, right? And the story goes like that actually halfway through the movie, they realized 2 things. One is the jokes are not as funny as they should be. And the second one is this character, what was his name? Rudy, thank you, was actually very mean. So Buzz Lightyear used to be the highlight, and they actually realized, no, actually, Rudy may be also the highlight, and they wanted to redo the character, right? Now imagine that difficult conversation after spending so much time and money on a movie, and they had the honesty to talk about it in the team and take a couple of steps back. And what they introduced was called the brain trust. So what they did is they went into, had a dedicated room with the key people going into that room, and they were like, okay, let's just be honest about it, right? And this is where they had a place where they actually can tell each other, hey, by the way, your jokes that you wrote, they are not that funny. And I mean, that may be, may have been very hard, because some of them were quite experienced people in the movie business, right? And the difference there, I think, is perhaps there is the stereotype, right, for Dutch people, that you can be very direct and you speak your mind, which is a fantastic thing. But if you say it straight and someone then straight away is closed down, especially if you have an international team, diverse people, different cultures, it may not work. But if you have really a dedicated space that you create, like a safe space, like Flor just mentioned, that you go out there and have those conversations, you get candor without the bruises. And this is my last of my 10 key ingredients for a successful DevOps culture. Thank you very much. I think I'm not going to do a Q&A, but I'm still around, so yeah, let's keep the conversation going. Oh, I got one. Do we have time, or?
No,
what does it say?
You don't want to know, though.
How would you hire smart? I mean, it depends what you're looking for, right? If you have a very highly specialized, nimble team, I would urge you to take your time, right? Don't feel pressured to make a hire. Nothing is more expensive than a bad hire, right? So, and I think a lot of people suffer from not enough talent out there and not enough good CVs in there. I would urge, just to be on the cautious side and then not make the hire if it's the wrong person, and that would be the right call for me. Okay, cool. I hand over to you. Thank you.
Give him a warm applause.